And we're live, guys. How are we all doing? Nice to see you again.
Hey.
I don't know what happened there at the intro. We cycled through the video about 2 times. So what's going on there? Guys, good to see you both again. How are we both keeping? Robbie, Swami, how are you doing?
I'm very good. I'm just amazed at everything going on in the World Cup, like I was saying, and but yeah, having a great time.
I know we won't mention the football. We won't mention it. I think Wales are a distant memory now. Unfortunately, having played against both the USA and England and Iran, but hey ho, it wasn't meant to be. Swami,
it's been exceptional.
Go ahead, Robbie.
No, I was just saying it's been really exceptional. Like the odds have just been some crazy things have happened. So,
okay, so things are good from this side also. Robbie and I, we do pair programming every weekend, and we are doing a lot of experiments on the configuration server and the identity server, which we are going to bring. One is in Node.js and TypeScript. One is in .NET 6 and SQL Server 2022. Mm-hmm. So a lot of experiment going on. We are enjoying our weekly sync up. Back to you, Robbie.
Yeah, well, I suppose we're just at the intro stage now then. So, I mean, look, should we just kick straight in? Obviously, this is our penultimate session before we break for the festive period. So we've got another session in 2 weeks. But, we broke away to start to look at the front-end client a couple of sessions ago, Robbie. And we had an awesome deep dive, essentially, into the Angular client last session. So I guess, should we just jump straight into it? Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of what we're going to be looking at this time, Robbie?
Yeah, so I got one more session. This session and next session are going to be spent in wrapping up the preliminary information around our front end and how we're going to build out our front end for products relative to products right now. That's what we've got already fleshed out. Mm-hmm. And then there are some details that are necessary to make that flow and work with the back end. And I think from there, Swami is going to be doing some presentation on that, some other services that we're going to want to expose at that time. But for right now, what we're really looking at is this time is going to be in separating out our concerns and having a design system so that which is separate so that we can have a consistent look and feel, not just whenever we're doing this products now, this products oriented repository now, but also later when we're doing other things. Like if we have like an advertising or couponing or we have a profile and, I don't know, we could have a social media page or something.
Yeah.
God knows what we're going to do in the future. I'm not going to go there, but just enable us to have a consistent look and feel across multiple front end projects, we're going to separate that out into a design system.
Oh, got you. So, yeah, I mean, should we delve straight in then? Because I think we are delving the depths at the moment. So, sorry, Swami, go on. You've got something to say.
Oh yeah, I just want to speak one general point, nothing related to this session. The thing is that it's like a disclaimer kind of thing, whether we spoke few, almost 10 episodes on the products microservice. Before that, we had a 30 minutes session to show that what is this, our 2.5 years journey, what we are going to take. So when we introduce a web API or Terraform or GitHub Actions, what is that we are assuming is some kind of basic knowledge others are having. If not, if someone doesn't have that, they can post it so that we will be able to cover it in the future session. All I'm trying to tell is that we are assuming that you guys have some foundational knowledge on this, and this is like a project based. We are taking it like how to build an solution with multiple technologies. Like if you see products API with .NET 6 and MongoDB, and identities .NET 6 with SQL Server, and configuration server, which Robbie has wrote, is Node.js, TypeScript, and it is an Azure function which gets deployed in the Kubernetes. So a lot of things are being worked out with multiple technologies. We assume that others have got a foundational knowledge of that, and we are going by how we build it in project. And if someone has got some queries, please feel free to post it. And that might be the reason we might not be able to cover like what is string interpolation or what is one-way data binding or one-way two-way data binding in Angular. Back to you, Robbie. Anything you need to add on top of this?
No, I was just going to say you're stealing my thunder here with all this, but that's fantastic. Actually, it was a really good presentation. Let me actually start off by just going back to session 12, our last session. There were some questions that were raised in live chat, and we wanted to discuss this just briefly to start out. You don't have to, but you can share my screen. Yeah. So the first question was, have you had a chance to work with NX Workspace? This was one of that may not have actually been the first question, but this is the first question that I wanted to respond to a little bit. So NX Workspaces will create projects with custom scaffolding, and that's kind of something that I like admire about other people that I watch on YouTube sometimes, is that they will set up their own system for creating a workspace in React or in some other fashion. And NX Workspaces do come with presets for Angular. If we were doing many different front ends, if this was a very front end focused project that we were working on, then I would definitely be benefiting from setting that up for myself so that I could reproduce the common scaffolding across all of those different front ends, like just my personal opinions for or my team's decided opinions for best practices. And it's a great way to do that, At where I was working most recently, we had a sourdough, what I call a sourdough approach, right? So we would have just like rather than using NX Workspaces, we would just use a sample repository that was set up the same way as most of our other repositories, that just had the best practices applied to it to set it up, and then didn't have an actual project inside of it. And then we could just pull from that project and reproduce the details that we needed in whatever project we were going to next. You'd be surprised at how well that works, despite the fact that it sounds not so good. but I think a clearer, and I didn't know about this at the time, if I was still working there now, I might be putting in NX workspaces, set up, set something up so that we could use NX to scaffold our project. So another thing that came up is the idea of workspaces is to have multiple apps running in the same workspace and sharing libraries. So I just wanted to touch on this because this is actually a great point, and we're about to dive into this right now. This is the session today where we're going to see a little bit about this. Although I'm not going to actually, I'm going to shortcut around it in a way. What Google imagined is that you might want to have your Angular, your design system, for example, or some common components that are being reused in a library package, and then import that and work with it directly in your front end project packages, right? So you would have multiple front end projects along with multiple libraries, all in a mono repo, and they built Angular to support that. And you might wonder, well, why did they do that? And it's actually because that's how they prefer. They prefer to work within a mono repo so that whenever a developer makes a change, then everybody benefits from that immediately, and that they can see like the changes that are made. Also, the developer can go back and validate that any changes that are made don't affect downstream dependencies in other projects because they're all in the same repository. That sounds like a good thing, but a problem with that is that you have one repository for everything, and it's weighty and complicated and can slow down processes. I don't mean to say that it's a bad practice, but or that it's a great practice either, and that it's something that I'm not really used to. I think that it's, there are different choices about how you want to use a mono repo. I think that a mono repo, the purpose of a mono repo really is to allow for lightweight full stack development. So you might have like a back end project, and then you also have a full front end project. And then whenever you want to specify a new payload, a new endpoint, you can create your payload and then share the types and share that, all of the scaffolding that's necessary in common between the front end and back end are available immediately. So the developer can, test locally and run the full stack application out of the same repo, etc. But without a lot of commonality in your libraries, and there certainly is a limit to that, there's just only so much benefit that you get out of a mono repo. So while we will be setting up a mono repo so that we can have a front end and then also have like a website that demonstrates that front end, in this case it'll be a design system, and then we will have the opportunity to set up like Storybook, where you can go in and as a website where you can go in and inspect your design system. Even though you can do that, we're going to make minimal use of it in this location, because I think that no matter what, you have to decide how much you really want to apply that and how well that fits into your own agile practice. The final comment was, that it was really cool. What was it that was really cool? I don't remember why I highlighted this. This is really cool. You don't have to write an absolute path. Oh yeah, the pathing. So that's for the package config. And the only reason I brought this up is because whenever we add Jest, which we're about to do, we're about to add Jest, we have a little bit of wrap up in the client. When we go back and we add Jest, we're going to have to reinstantiate those absolute paths. There's a way you can do that is even more automatic than the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to actually spell it out and just like reapply those so that Jest will work with them. But I just wanted to point out, because I thought that this was maybe a good jumping off point into the actual wrap up of the client last time. I kind of like just, bulldoze through the session 12 comments. Give me a second here, and I guess I'll just jump right in to wrapping up the client configuration. So the reason I'm even calling it that, wrapping up client configuration, is because we were creating the opportunity to have a client environment that was easy for developers to work with, that was comfortable for them to work with, that provided, things like we were just talking about with paths. These paths allow us to put in cleaner path imports whenever we're doing our imports. I wonder what's going on with my language service. Are you guys there, by the way? I'm not hearing anything at all. So
Yeah. Can you? Yeah, we're still here. Listening intently, I think, is the word.
Yeah, I just muted myself.
Okay, very good. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, so we have these opportunities for things like paths, but there are a couple of things we can add in. The things that we're going to add in, and this is going to be the wrap up of the configuration of our client application, is we're going to add in Jest and we're going to add in Husky. And Jest is like out of the box. Angular comes with Jasmine testing, Jasmine Karma. But I prefer to use Jest just because, and I think, it's probably pretty common for developers to feel that way. So there are two different versions. I'm trying to think of what to show you. There are two different versions of schematics that are available so that you can skip having to set it up manually. One of them is from Angular Jest /schematics. And then there's another one from Braybug Jest schematic. And for right now, at least, this one from whoever Braybug is, and we'll just set that up right now. Their schematic is right. I like it. And I would suggest using it. It's easier. It works more out of the box. So the first step is just to, it's not going to let me, please. I'll just type it. It's just to add it with ng. Add Braybug just schematics. And what this does, or schematic, what this does is it runs a script within Angular that sets up your npm, but it won't actually do the npm install. But it will modify files so that you're set to then and remove files. Like it'll remove all of your, in this case, this one will remove all of your Karma dependencies so that you are properly running with Jest. After doing this, I'm going to have to do an npmi. And I hope you don't mind if you hear a little bit of, it doesn't get too loud, but if you hear a little bit of weird sounds
Robbie,
up on the roof, people doing work that decided to come just at the start of our, literally
I'm
at the
seeing
start
the screen, and
so here you can see it making these changes now. It's deleting Karma, deleting the test set up for Karma. It's creating the one for Jest.
I think we've lost him through the browser, but I think he's still going out through the stream. So, yeah. Robbie, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you can try and rejoin, we have lost your audio.
Oh,
hang on, you're back. You're back. It's fine.
Right back.
Oh, he's gone anyway.
There we go. It was like a frozen.
Yeah, I think it was just the web interface. So yeah, apologies anybody watching. We've got a web interface that seemed to have frozen, so we'll get Robbie right there. He is.
Hey, do you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
You're back now.
To be honest, you did come back just before you left, but yeah.
I'm really sorry. I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know that we were having that problem.
No, it's all right. I think you were still going out the stream fine, but it was just me and Swami stopped hearing you because of the web thing. So let me just grab your desk and we can get right back to where you were.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So it's created these files for us, but we now need to actually apply them with an npm install.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, you're back now, desktop and all.
Yeah. So I apologize about the roof construction here, but they're just making a lot of noise right now. So I'm just going to run the npm audit fix, even though I don't typically need to. We're now behind because Angular is on to 15. We're not really prepared in this presentation to migrate up to 15. Right now, there are some things that have become standard, like standalone components. That require, or at least benefit, they don't really require it. You can migrate dumbly, basically, to Angular 15, but to really make use of Angular 15, it would require a more thorough rewrite. Right now, we're not going to do that. So we're going to live with some moderate problems in our build environment. And I just wanted to highlight that usually these problems, you should inspect that yourself, I guess, but these problems usually will be constricted to the build environment if they're not modified. After doing that, it's now actually already done a lot of work in our repository. So if I just go in to, it's interesting that this is where I'm at. Give me just a second here. Code dot. That's better. Yeah. All right. So if I go into I have a Jest config, and it's set up with details here. My TS config for testing has been set up for Jest. This used to say Jasmine, I think. Speaking of which, in this, we benefit from setting up this value as well. So
do you know what? I think we're, all this time we've been sharing the wrong screen, Robbie. I think, one second, I think we got Swami's doing some stuff around Udemy.
Oh no. All right, so let me I can scroll up. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay, let me just scroll up here and show you that the pieces that might not have been shown the first time. This is the command that we ran to do the scaffolding install.
Yeah, got you.
And then afterwards, I had to do npmi just to make the thing up to date. And I was highlighting that these vulnerabilities will start showing up as you fall behind. And so it behooves you to try and keep up to date with Angular, but we're not going to do that quite yet. Maybe we'll come back at a later time and do that. So it's still benefit, obviously, from doing an npm audit fix. Oops, let me just, that was an accidental copy. You benefit from doing an npm audit fix whenever you see vulnerabilities like that, just to make sure that you knock out the ones that you can. And all right, so that was actually about it. And then over here, this is the file I was talking about. The ts config spec was showing types Jest. It used to say Jasmine, but that got updated by the scaffolding, and we just added this line ourselves. Jest benefits from that. Now the other thing we need to do is, if we look at our paths here, we need to re-implement these paths in Jest configuration. And you do that with module name mapper is the value. And you can look this up in the Jest documentation. It's very clear how to do this. It doesn't quite look this way, but it's, I mean, the changes that we'll have to make here are pretty minimal. Like these arrays aren't great. And so this, I think, needs to be like, that's how you have to do regular expression looking replacements. And we want to make everything from root dir. So you all are getting this now, right?
Yes, we've got that. Okay. We can see you. Yeah. I'm just wondering how Swami's getting on with his Udemy.
Yeah. Best of luck to you, Swami. All right. So now after doing this, we should be able to run a test. I don't even want to do that here. I'm going to do it here. And whenever I do npm run test, or just npm test, because you don't have to run test, this should run we should see this actually working with Jest, and it is. And I imagine these are going to fail. And that's great, because that'll let me almost do testing, but we're not actually going to do real testing. Maybe we could, but what I want to show is, yeah, that there are still some issues. What's this with the import? Config dir index. Okay, so this has to be changed that way. Oh, and then root dir has to be spelled correctly. Okay, I still have failures. What did I get failures on now? No, good. These are null failures. Perfect. So now I want to actually provide the things that the components that I'm testing or services that I'm testing require. So let me just go ahead and do that. I don't know why I would need to do that. There's got to be a service that, yeah, it's the service that is requiring me that. So I have a service, just to remind you guys, let's just look at that together. This service here is used in this component. This component here is pulling the service in. And then if we look in the service, it's pulling in HTTP client. And that's the reason why when we're testing that component, we're getting this error here, no provider for HTTP client, even though it's not part of the client. So one thing you could do is you could do provides, whatever it is, providers. And then you could use this sort of a substitution where you do, I can't remember what it is. It's not provides. And then like use value to replace it. And then you'll have to actually make sure that your use value is a proper mock of, or you could use like a just mock of product service. But in this case, we'll actually, for now, we'll leave that that service imported in, and we'll actually just provide the import that it's requesting, which is the client testing module. Usually you would actually provide the HTTP client module, but we're not going to do that here. I have to know where that's from because my import is not working, but that's okay. This is your common HTTP. Where is it? All right, now I actually have to go and find it. Testing. Make sure you're on that. You can actually set this up on a watch in your package config, but for now I'm just going to rerun every so often and see where I end up. I just want to walk through these just because these are like the initial failures that we were getting in these tests whenever we hadn't yet started testing. We still have not started testing, right? But we want to find out what are the things we need to get to the point where we can start testing. I have an actual throw in a component which doesn't belong there, so let's go fix that. In the service. Yeah, right here. Did you see that? I don't know why I left. I just left that there. So
as you hit that delete, then you deleted yourself. Oh, you gone again. You're still there, but I'm getting errors. Swarmy's gone.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, I think Robbie has just had a bit of an issue. So I think he hit the button. I could see him flickering, but then I can see you've gone offline as well. But you're still there, but not on the stream.
Ah.
So hold the line, everybody. I'm sure Robbie will be back with us as soon as possible.
Yeah. So I don't want the fourth speaker to be flashed on the screen. I switched off my video. My younger one is roaming near me.
Yeah, well, there we go. Robbie's back now anyway, I think.
Back to Robbie.
Can you hear us?
Were you guys, are you guys hearing me now?
Yeah, you kind of just dropped from the stream, so I think there must be that building work outside is probably being a bit too close to your internet line is.
Oh, that's a problem. So how long have I been gone?
About a minute, 1 minute.
So so I solved that problem just with the HTTP client import. HTTP client testing import. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm doing my best.
No, it's okay. I think it was just a technical glitch. So you're doing fine.
Yeah. So I'm still just modifying. I was saying I'm modifying the tests. The reason I'm actually going through this process is because these are the failures that were coming up whenever we did the initial switch over to Jest. These would have been failures even without Jest. They're failures with Jest as well. But now that we're starting to actually, now that we're ready to use Jest, we're actually starting to, or preparing to do real tests. So these are the tests that I need to clean up just to get it to the point where we can actually, do tests the way we intend to. So here I've got an old test that was created by default by the client, by the default app that we received, and it's not rendering a title because I've gotten rid of title. Although actually there is a title, I'm just not actually rendering it anymore, right? Yeah, I've got my own HTML there. So it should render title. I'm just gonna put an X in front of this to comment it out, and I should now have all passing tests. I could also, replace it, I guess. It's interesting that we're having the internet problems that we've been having, because I can hear my brother in the background playing a live video game, and he's not having any problems. There we go.
You must be on one of those 100 people live games and using all the bandwidth up. Battle Royale.
Yes. All right. So now we're moving on to Husky because we're done with the Jest part. And the first thing I did, you'll notice, is I did this git init. And the reason that I did this is because I haven't already added this. This is just a demo of the NG client that we actually have published. So I haven't added this into Git yet, and you can't set up Husky without setting up Git. Mm-hmm. So why? What is Husky? Husky is something that attaches to your Git, like your Git commit or your Git push, and you can do things before or after those automatically. So it'll just automatically run a script just to make sure, like, for example, a great idea is to have it run linting before you do a commit. Because if you have a problem with your linting, you probably want to fix that before you commit. So to that effect, let's actually set that up with npx, which will execute directly from an npm repository. And there's this Husky in it is provided for us. And then we'll do an install after that. And by doing npx Husky init, it'll set up Husky for us in our project, as long as we allow it. And it created a pre-commit for us on that already. Let's actually look at that. I didn't realize it created a pre-commit for us. Yeah, it does. All right, that's great. And now I just want to set I'm going to set up a package JSON script for prepare for whenever you first install this, so that whenever new developers get it, they get Husky install as a consequence. If you don't run Husky install, whenever you first get clone your repository, then you won't get the benefit of it whenever you do your Git. So now we just need to add our scripts. So we already have pre-commit, so we're just going to do pre-push. And now now you can see it created the pre-push in the .husky folder. So we go into pre-commit. And I don't actually want it to do, for me, I don't want it to do tests every time I commit. Sometimes I want to do work in progress while I have work in tests. And I don't want the commit to fail because the tests are failing, right? So we'll just do npm lint fix in pre-commit. And in pre-push, now I definitely want npm test. And I also want to make sure that it builds correctly. So we'll run build prod. And this is just because you might have multiple versions of build set up. So we'll just set that up right now. I'll have build and build prod. Like that. And so now I should be able to npm run prepare, we're Husky install at that point. Just to make sure everything is set. And now let's just do a commit just to see if we get the linting, right? From Husky. Is Husky actually doing work for us now? Lint. Did I misspell lint? It's obviously working. Oh, I bet you it's supposed to be ng lint. Yes, definitely it's working. And it found a errant space on line 13. It doesn't like that space, huh? No empty lifecycle method. But that's definitely not. Do I need like a no-op comment here? Well, we'll leave this for now because I'm not actually interested in working with working with the linter. I didn't actually set up the linter, which is something like I could get rid of this rule. No empty lifecycle. Where are my rules here? Here we go. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of that rule. I don't agree with that. I like empty lifecycle methods. I mean, not all of them, but actually, it makes me wonder now that because that says no empty lifecycle method. And this is the constructor, it's not the lifecycle method, and that is not empty. And this is saved. Oh, and I can't right click into it because of the space in my path. That was my own fault. I fooled Visual Studio Code. Check that out. All right, so
is that what it's complaining about? Is it?
yeah, when I try to write, normally I could click like that by holding Command or Control.
Right, it's just not taking the whole
directly
path,
to the line directly to the location where it thinks the error is. It says 14.3, but 14 doesn't have a 3.
All right.
There is a 13, and this is empty, but this is not a life cycle. Let me just try commenting that out, just because my curiosity is now getting the better of me. I think it's ESLint disable. If this doesn't work, I'm going to skip it because the linting, completely the linting is not actually.
It's like you say, it's
important.
worth having a quick look because if it's something obvious, then it's worth having a play, isn't it, for 2 seconds?
Yeah. So I will drop that. We can come back to that, or I can come back and look at the ESLint configurations that are important to us at a later time. Really. We have now wrapped up that the configuration of our project in the grander scheme of things. We have a Husky that has pre-commit working. It's rendering, like this is not me running nglint, this is me running git commit. And then Husky is attaching and running the lint command for us. So you can see that that's all working for us. And so this will do what we wanted it to do for our project. The next thing we really want to do is we want to style and build out our project more fully. But the first thing that we think, or you might think, is, do I want to be writing the style myself, or would I rather be using, as had been mentioned before, Angular material? Or if your company already has a specific design language that they want to use, do you want to reproduce that in its own repository? So that's the separation of design concerns that are important to us. And give me just a second here. I need to scroll a little bit to get to where I am. So, okay. So the first thing I want to do now is allow us to have that separation of concern.
Robbie?
So what we're going to do, yes.
I have a couple of points. Just wanted to discuss. Thought of to interrupt you. Sorry for that. As you told, like different frameworks, they are there. It's not that something is wrong with that, but this is my thought process, and I was seeing multiple videos and authors, they were talking about this. Like you have the Bootstrap or Angular material or Tailspin are different frameworks. So some of the people, they want full control on the coloring as well as the look and feel. So some people wants to use the existing framework and go faster to the market. Some people wants the full control on the CSS. Like assume that if Johnny has written some new CSS framework, which I might be inclined towards using it, but Robbie, you want to write your own CSS instead of using Robbie's framework. Am I making sense, or?
Yeah. I can understand that those nature of concerns.
Yeah, that's what some companies they feel. I watched a lot of videos in Pluralsight or Udemy or lot of different places. Some of the authors, they open up the HTML code, VS Code with HTML and the CSS, and they start building everything. And it looks wonderful. I mean, the fundamentals of how to build everything is very much important, even when we are using the existing framework. That will help us to understand that how this particular widget, like maybe the rounded corners or some kind of animations or some kind of controls which is already coming out of the box when we use this framework. First thing is, it helps us understand better how these people would have done. And if we want to enhance that, override it, at least we will have that knowledge that where to go and override. Back to you, Robbie. Thanks.
Okay. Johnny, can you put me on just on video, like so you can see me as opposed to my screen?
Yeah.
I just want to discuss that together a little bit. I thought that was maybe even better dive into the separation of concerns, design concerns than I had given. So I just want to give a little bit of because those two things, what I presented and what Swami presented, sounded essentially different, and they're not, to my opinion, necessarily different. It's just that they're looking at different aspects of the same thing. In your company, you're going to, in any project, doesn't have to be a company, you're going to have a front end, you're going to want to style that, and you're either going to use a pre-built system like Bootstrap, or you're going to not. You're just going to build it on your own. And the thing is that works just great. And for some companies, the actual source of truth is going to be in the designs themselves. They're going to be in, graphically oriented documents. That they're going to be in Sketch or Figma or InVision. And they're not yet going to have a design system. So it might make sense to flesh that out directly in the project. And if the only thing you're ever going to do is that one project, then that's probably actually the right thing to do. But if you're going to be reproducing it from place to place, then it makes sense to look at having a design system. And some of these projects that are like Bootstrap, like Angular Material, can be used as a design system. You can also apply your own styling on top of those, but they can be used as a design system themselves. And in fact, I think even Bootstrap really can be, if that visual pattern appeals to you. But you might want to use those. You might want to use the Angular Material or Bootstrap within your own design system. Whenever we go forward from here, after doing the presentation for how to set up the design system, the real design system that we're actually using, just because we don't have an opinion, we don't have a designer that we're working with, is, its foundations are in another CSS package that's provided to us. The value that you get out of doing this is that it allows you to work on multiple projects and maintain that consistency, even if you're making changes to Bootstrap, or even if you're not using, a design, a pre-built CSS system like Bootstrap or Angular Material or anything else.
Yeah, Robbie, I really like the point which you said we can use this Bootstrap or Tailspin or Angular Material as our design system. But the point which I was bringing in is the developers who are maintaining or who are utilizing these pre-built framework as a design system, they need to know the internals, or they need to know how the things are developed. Because you brought a very good point. We can use the Angular Material as our design system, and we can add on top of it. So in this case, I need to know that how it is built. So where should I change? What properties should I change? So basically what I'm trying to tell is you need to have a good hold on the CSS, HTML, and these things, how to design the boxes or placeholders, or I'm throwing some ideas like hyperlinks with some styles and mouse overs, mouse out. You need to know the internals, and you can build your own design system or use the existing pre-built design system and modify on top of that. But
Yes.
without the knowledge, it's like Swami reaching Robbie. Hey, Robbie, how can I change the background color of mouse over on a hyperlink?
We're not going to be doing any of that today. but I agree with you that it does help to have a familiarity and an understanding of how it works, what the internals are, what the pros and cons, the trade-offs are for building it with these different systems.
That is very,
now,
very
I'm just
important.
going to assume that we are already made up our mind. We want to have a separate library. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to switch on to my screen again so that you guys can see. I'm in the client directory. I'm going to back out, and I'm going to back out. I could do this inside of the client directory. I could do it without the create application thing in that case. When I'm in the client repository, I can just create a new library or a new package. And what is it called? It's actually NGG library is the thing I would use. So it's library to create the package. And that would create the design system package right there in the client app as part of that mono repo. But we're not going to do that. We're going to separate our concerns here because we want to have a nice, clear separation of concerns. So we're going to create a brand new one. And that is not the one I wanted to paste. So I'll go ahead and write it. It is ng new is the command. And then you would normally have your library name here. So I'm just going to call it library, actually. But it doesn't have it's not like new library. It's new my library. Create application equals false, and this spares you the process of setting up an application in a repo where you're not intending to actually have an application. You could go back and add an application afterwards. You could generate an app inside of this project after we create it. But let's just do this. I'm just going to create a new library folder. That's set up for our library. And there's nothing in it, right? There is the minimum scaffolding necessary to do builds out of your library, but there's no project in it yet. So we need to set one up. We're going to set up a library type project, which is used in your import statements. So we're going to have import. We're going to be able to import in from our library the components that we're going to build here that have been pre-styled. And we'll be able to import in or make use of the resources that we set up inside of this library. So let's go ahead and go into it. And NGG library design system. And in a production environment, in a real company environment, you would not want to share. If it's just a personal project, you would probably want to share. I mean, unless you have a desire not to particularly, you feel very secretive or protective of your information, or you just don't want to waste the milliseconds. But you can see now it's created within project, within the projects folder inside of library, which is the repo, a new project called design system. And design system has like a source folder. It's got all the stuff you would expect in an Angular project. So let's take a look at what we got. This is not it. Hold on just a second. This is it. So we have a projects folder, design system. It's already set up with Karma by default because it always comes set up that way. We would want to go through that same process that we just went through with Jest if we wanted to swap that out. And you'll notice that there's a base TS config, and then there's a TS config for that particular project, because it's set up now as a mono repo. So we can now go back here, or we could do it in the, actually here. We can do this on the command line. And npm build or run build. And since we only have one project, I think it'll actually, it'll recognize design system and go ahead and try to compile it for us. And we get a dist folder. And in our dist folder, we get a design system folder because that's the project that it gave us. By default, normally, I think it does not actually give us design system in dist. I have to go back and look at that. But whenever you set it up with different projects within the same Angular mono repo, then you'll definitely get that in your dist. And one of the things you'll notice is that there's this descriptor. I can't remember what the D actually stands for, but for the types in TypeScript, so that it knows how to map those types onto. That's probably because it's not done in production. So it has maps. But these are the export JavaScripts that are generated of our design system. If we look at what was actually in the design system by default, there is a component. Let me make that wider so we can see. There's a component. In this case, there's a module presenting that component, and there is a service. That's what it gives you by default whenever you set up a new library. And if we look at it at the D files, which map to the values that are inside of the design system here, these JavaScript files here, we can see strange names around, things, but like with these I0 and I1, because it's slightly uglified. I can't remember what the term is. It's not uglified, but this is the thing that I really want to draw attention to, this public API one on the outside, which is just going in and grabbing these things from lib and exposing them. You might wonder, where did that come from? They're inside of design system. If we close up the lib folder itself, here there's a public API, right? And it's doing that export. This public API is that public API. So when the design system package gets built and the artifact is ready to be pushed up to NPM or pushed up to your artifact hosting location, which we'll explore a bit later in the next session, the index, I think it's the index. What's the root of this? Exports by default package. Huh. Okay, I'm not exactly remembering how to find it. Let me go over here and see if I see it here. I don't. Am I in where I think I'm at? I'm in design system and dist. Yeah, okay. I see the types and I see these values. This must be just a change from the last time I've looked at this from an earlier version of Angular. There would be the entry point would be indicated in your package JSON, and it would point to like an index file, such as these really. So the design system MJS here is where it's actually exporting those values from. So it's set up to export from your public API, essentially. What I'm trying to show you is that if you look in your source at your public API, everything you expose here will actually be exposed from your design system. So, or your library. If you want to add a new component, you also have to go in and add it to your public API. Now we should talk about the different types of compilation a little bit. Something that came up earlier, 2 sessions ago, was the difference between just-in-time and ahead-of-time compilation. Like AOT, generally speaking, ahead-of-time compilation gives tighter code, and it's like the default pattern of production. But that's not true for testing. I think whenever you're running tests in Angular, it runs just-in-time compilation. The Ivy, which was another thing that was highlighted, is the system that's used to produce the rendering and also to do compilation. It is, as of, I believe, Angular 13, the only option for the rendering engine. And it produces these artifacts that we're looking at here through a process that you could actually eject and modify, but we're not going to get into anything like that. I've done these 2 sessions in reverse order here, where I was talking about within the dist folder, these details. I did those kind of first. So all right, so now we're actually on to introducing the design system itself. So now that we know kind of we've oriented to the project, we've oriented to the library, the folder, the output, the way we're actually going to compile that output, and then later what we'll obviously package and publish are going to be artifacts based on this dist value, this folder that gets published in dist. And so what I was going to talk about is we're just going to talk about this really about the, what a design system is useful for. The design system, I mean, in specific, as opposed to in a very general way. A design system standardizes design for use at scale. A standard library for design reduces redundancy and ensures visual consistency. So the pieces of a design system that we will be adding here are, page standards like color and type. So those will be CSS files or SCSS files, and you can create a SCSS folder, a value that is used within components here. You can also then import from there by modifying your Angular JSON or I think largely by modifying your Angular JSON. There are also ways to do it without necessarily doing that. But besides those SCSS values or CSS values, the other things that you could do are build your menus, your inputs, your standardized components that you want to reuse and have a common look and feel. And then the final type of kind of a design system is something to do with layout standards, which is largely what people, in my opinion, typically use Bootstrap for, is for the layout. If you happen to be using Bootstrap, so you can use it to set up, layout standards relative to mobile and tablet, and possibly also have intelligent defaults for print. This will be things like columns and setting up a page grid, things of that nature. And in the next session, that's actually what we're going to be exploring. We're going to get into those details within this design system to some degree.
Cool.
Back to you guys.
No, good stuff. Thanks, Robbie. I think it's one of those things, isn't it? I think following along with, kind of deep dive coding, it can be tricky for people. But I think the way that you described it, the way that the clients come together and the kind of, the parts to that as, Husky and Linter and using things like that are kind of making sense to me. Like I keep saying as a non-developer, but no, it's good to go through these sessions, I think, for anybody to learn a little bit more about those, those languages, essentially.
Yeah, what we wanted to do this session was to present the things that you need to make use of and to feel comfortable developing in the repo before we go ahead and do that. Since this is the first time we're creating something that the result of it won't actually get published to like a Kubernetes container,
Yeah. It's just about that environment and setting yourself up for success and making sure that you've got things compartmentalized. Like you say, that separation of concerns is a big part of it, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it helps with the agile process. This is my opinion. I mean, obviously, Google has been very successful having large and intricate monorepos with just dozens of projects together. So there are definitely alternatives as well.
So we've had a few questions as we've been going through that. Swami, I don't know if you've managed to kind of tackle those in the chat as we've been going through. But yeah, I think they've been kind of angled at the time we've been talking, to be honest, Robbie. So I think you've been kind of knocking
actually.
I promise we'll come back. By the way, I promise we'll come back on anything that we missed. If we didn't address any questions, we can come back next time and we will touch them out at the beginning of each one of these. I'm trying to do, questions from last time that I can answer.
No, good stuff. Well, there we go. We're at the end of another episode. We've got one more before the festive break, which will be, what date did we say that was? The 18th, was it? The 18th?
16th December, Friday.
Friday
That
the
will
16th.
be our December 16th will be our 14th session. And after December 16th, January 2023 is a break for all three of us.
Yeah.
And again, the first week of February, first Friday and third Friday, the cycle remains same, but we'll start from February. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, look, guys, we'll catch up in a couple of weeks' time, but thank you everybody for watching. Like Robbie's saying, now we'll pick up the questions and try and include them in the next session. But all that's left to say is thank you for watching and bye from the three of us. Bye for now.
Bye, folks.
Bye, guys.